Hi guys, it's X. Welcome back to my channel. On this video, I wanted to discuss getting your first nurse practitioner job and the timeline, what not to worry about, and just have some patience and give yourself some grace. The reason why I was motivated to make this video is because, and I will make a disclaimer, I got really lucky and got the first job I was offered to me right out of school, and it happened to be one of my preceptorship sites, so I got very lucky and very fortunate for that. So I have a little bit different experience than a lot of other people, but I have experience with timeline and then experience actually working and trying to find nurse practitioners for our groups. So what motivated me to make this video was it was a little confusing to me now that I've been a nurse practitioner about 2 years now, and we have lost and gotten so many nurse practitioners in the last 2 years. And the funny part to me was that I am part of 2 nurse practitioner groups on Facebook, and I see people struggle a lot trying to find a job, especially new grads. But what I find funny is that in working with so many different nurse practitioners, losing them and then them coming on, what I found a little funny was that my job actually has a hard time keeping them and finding them. And so it just like kind of made me laugh, because I'm like, I don't understand why it's so hard for us to find nurse practitioners to fill a position when I see so many nurse practitioners on these websites saying, I can't find a job, like help me. So that's what motivated me to make this video. So the emphasis of this video is going to be basically the timeline of when I first got hired, because it does take a while, and I don't want you to have the misinterpretation that this is just like a nursing job. With my nursing job, and I live in the state of California, I live in the Los Angeles County area, and there are just so many different hospitals around. So I just wanted to make that disclaimer, because I don't live in a rural area where I don't have that many job options. So when I say this next statement, take it with a grain of salt. As a nurse, if I were to quit my job, get fired, get laid off, I can have another job literally probably within the hour to the day. Why? Because every hospital facility is so short-staffed, and it is probably not that difficult to find a travel job, a registry job, a job on Indeed, or other hospitals. I didn't realize how many hospitals I actually lived near until I was a new grad. When I was a new grad, I had a very specific, and this is nurse, not nurse practitioner, I had a very specific goal in mind of what I wanted. So I drew a 25-mile radius around my house, and I noticed that there was about 60 hospitals within that 25-mile radius. And that is a lot of different facilities that I didn't even know existed, but found them through that. And then on top of that, there are so many more different clinics. So when I say as a nurse, I can probably quit my job and have a new one by tomorrow, it's likely. I mean, probably won't start tomorrow, but it is very easy, I think, as a nurse to find another job. Now, when it comes to being a nurse practitioner, it is not like that at all. And the reason why is because of your privileging, your credentialing, and all that stuff. It takes time. And so it is not the type of job you can just walk away from and have another one the next day. It takes time because the hospitals, the med staff have to look through your background, your malpractice insurance, see if you have any pending litigations, and see, make sure you are the best fit for them. And it takes a while to go through background checks and having all the right paperwork, and then getting you actually privileges in the hospital. So I'm going to talk about my timeline now. As I said, I was very lucky and very fortunate that when I graduated from school, I graduated my nurse practitioner school in December of 2021. I believe it was like December 17th or 18th. I had taken a month to sit and study for the boards. I can't remember exactly when I got my testing, able to actually sit for the board, but I do know that I took it on February 15th of 2022, and I'll never forget the date because it's my dad's birthday. So I knew, like, that is about a month and a half, maybe 2 months exactly from when I graduated. But I chose that date. So at least a month from when I graduated to when I submitted everything. My school submitted everything to AACN. That's who I took my board with. I was literally officially like, here you go. Here's your nurse practitioner certification on that day. Now, licensing with the state of California, I do believe that I had already applied and was just pending sending them everything, because my school had to send them stuff, and I had to apply for the California state license and then the furnishing license. And then because I'm in the state of California, and if I wanted to prescribe Schedule II drugs, I had to take a special course, and I had to do that before submitting it to the DEA. Reason so, I worked trauma, and I knew I was going to be prescribing narcotics, and I was going to be in the ICU, so I knew I would have to prescribe fentanyl. So I knew for a fact that I needed this. So overall, it cost me about $2,000 for my DEA, my California license, my furnishing, taking the board, getting all licensed and all that stuff. So I actually, like I said, was very lucky. I didn't go in pursuit of a job. My preceptor site, I was lucky enough to do 360 hours at this site at one of my places. So I did nephrology at one very big hospital. I did home crit there as well. And then I did trauma and ICU at my current job. So I was lucky enough that my school allowed me to do the 360 hours with this place, because half my time was spent in the ICU and then half my time was spent in the trauma unit, where we kind of see everybody on the floor. When I graduated, I had no actual intent to start looking for a job right away. Mentally, I just was not ready to step away from bedside, as odd as that sounds, because you're probably like, then why did you become an NP? I already had a job that I absolutely loved, and I just sought out higher education, and I always took this as, if I never used my nurse practitioner license, honestly, it stemmed from wanting to have a baby. I was like, if I have a baby, and this was years ago in 2018 when I first started thinking about becoming a nurse practitioner, I was like, I just want to get it. I just want to get school out the way, get my master's, because if I ever want to have a baby, I don't want to ever have to go back, which is not the mindset that you should have. If you're going to go to nurse practitioner school, make sure you are ready to leave the bedside and actually start working, because of all the qualifications that you need in order to keep your nurse practitioner license that I did not know about prior to getting my license. So enough of that story. But so yeah, I saw it as, if anything, this was going to make me a better ICU nurse. Well, my preceptor had reached out to me after I graduated and got licensed and asked me, and she said, like, hey, we're expanding our practice. They were actually looking to add a total of 10 nurse practitioners to this group. And I was like, awesome. And she's like, would you want to apply? Well, the thing is, I live very, very, very far away from my job, from my current job. And so I told her, well, I would only do it if they gave me a part-time position, because there's no way, and they work 4/10s. So I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to take this full-time, because it is very far away from my house. I know my husband would not be willing to move there. So I had driven there, I want to say, for 7 months while I was in school anyway. I already knew what the drive was like. So I was like, if there's any way that they would give me 2 12-hour shifts a week, I would absolutely take it. And she's like, well, it doesn't hurt to ask. I would motivate you to still apply and try and negotiate, even if the Indeed or LinkedIn or whatever you're applying, if it's the actual website, says like, this is the qualifications. It never hurts to ask and just apply, because this particular facility, or hiring, the people who are my boss, never had a part-time position or a per diem position at this location, ever. it was actually negotiated for me, and they had to fight really hard to get this negotiated for me. So this was not even an option at all to anyone when I first applied. But my circumstance was a little different. They knew me. For 7 months, they got to know me. And I was like, there's no other way that I can take the job, because I'm not going to take it if it's full-time, just based off the fact that I know it's way too far, and traffic in Los Angeles is absolutely insane. I would sit in traffic for 3.5 hours, so there's no way I'm going to do that 4 days a week. And I know my husband wasn't going to move. So I got lucky, and I applied for the job, or I was told about the job around January actually. When I licensed in February and got all that stuff together, they actually were like, okay, let's move in with the process. So I actually had my first interview in March of 2022. So got licensed in January I found out about the job in January of 2022. I licensed in February of 2022, and I had my first interview in March of 2022. I had an interview with the head attending physician and our assistant, and she kind of just wanted to get to know me, see like what I'm about. And then I had another interview with the 2 nurse practitioners that we're working with, and one of them, of course, was my preceptor. So after that, I actually didn't hear from them for a while, and I reached out to my preceptor because it wasn't like I had interviewed in April or March, but I hadn't heard anything for like the entire month. So I was trying not to get my hopes up, and I was starting to panic. And I had texted my preceptor like, hey, like, did I not get the job? Like, just be honest with me. It's okay if I didn't. And she was like, no. I'm not surprised they haven't reached out to you. They're still working really hard on the negotiation because this is new. This in your particular circumstance. So let's take that time frame also into account. I had a specific circumstance that they were trying to make this new position for me because nobody had worked 212s. Everyone's doing 410s. So she was like, they're just working really hard to negotiate this. Like, okay. I finally heard that I got the job in April of 2022. So that was already 4 months from like when I originally heard about the job. And so I was excited, but the way also my job works, and so you have to take this into consideration as well, is I have a boss at one facility, but I'm actually contracted at a different facility. So my employer I'm not working at the facility that my employer actually is employing me from. I'm contracted to a different facility, which is another, like, I think 50 miles away from where my actual employer is. And because of that, I had to basically get privileges at both facilities. So I had to do all this background checks, sending all my licenses and stuff through to one employer and then to the second hospital where I'd actually be at. And this is like physical blood work, making sure my background check and all this stuff. So it actually took months. I actually didn't start working until April 16th of 2022. So that is about a 5 to 6 month process. Some hospitals take less than that, about 2 to 3 months, but because of my specific circumstances, it took 6. So when you are looking for a job, have some patience, give yourself some grace, especially if you're a new grad. I highly suggest that if you're going to apply somewhere, I know this is hard to wrap your mind around because I think as new grads, you just want a job to have a job. Like, you spent all this money, you probably have student loans, and so you just want to get anything that you can find. One thing that I've been lucky enough was that I already had a nursing job. I was still working there. So I was in no rush to find a job because I still had something paying my bills. I already knew that I was very passionate about trauma, and I knew that that is where my heart was and where I wanted to be. I do not suggest you run out and get any job. I suggest that you find a job that makes you really, really happy, because at the end of the day, you are going to be in that position. And if you are going to go through 3 months of processing this and like going through this process and filling out all the paperwork, because it is a lot of paperwork. I sat there for hours filling out all this paperwork for 2 different hospitals. So if you're gonna take the time to actually go through all this, you want to make sure that you are happy. I know that's easier said than done because we just want to run out and get the first job, but honestly, my new model in life after becoming a nurse practitioner is do what makes you happy and do what is going to help you sleep at night. Don't take a job just to take a job to have a job, as hard as that sounds. Having patience is going to probably be the hardest part. I would not worry too much about finding a job unless you don't have one, then that makes it obviously a little bit harder because you have to pay your bills. I would go back to nursing and doing bedside for a while if you have to, just in the meantime, or do registry at least until you find, your dream job. I also give yourself grace because sometimes these places just take a long time to go through the applications, and they're also vetting. And I'm telling you, like, I sit at work and hear like, we've had this job application out for a while and nobody can't find anybody, and I'm like, I don't understand why it's so hard for us to find a job. I mean, for us to find nurse practitioners to fill this job, when I see many people on these nurse practitioner forums, many students who are like, I want to find a job, but I can't. Also, I do have to consider, and I haven't considered this in the past because I live in Los Angeles, and like I said, we're just so heavily populated with different places to work. I think that's a little bit harder, so I'm sorry if you live in a smaller state or a rural area where there isn't that many options. But I would definitely be very careful also when negotiating, and I want you to know this as a new grad. Make sure that if you read, excuse me, I'm filming. If you read your contract, make sure you don't have a non-compete clause, or make sure that you are okay with that non-compete clause. I'm hoping that this is not a factor anymore because I know it's in the process federally of getting rid of it. But basically, and I didn't know this, I learned this in my legal class, that there are contracts that will dictate that you can't work in the same field for a certain amount of years, or in the same, like, a radius of like how far. So for some, like, you can't work for 3 years in pulmonology within 25 miles of our location. For me, that's not a big deal. I mean, it might be for some, because in Los Angeles, 25 miles is very far, and that's probably an hour or 2 of traffic, depending on what time you're leaving. But if you're in a smaller rural area, that also can take into account of what that limits you to. Because if you literally have 1 or 2 clinics in your vicinity and you count for 25 miles and then you have to travel way far for that for 3 years, that is going to affect your life a lot. So just make sure that you pay attention to that as a new grad, because I did not learn that until my legal class, and I'm glad I paid attention. And if you want more information on how scary that is, look up Haley Page. Haley Page is a wedding dress designer. She was on the show Say Yes to the Dress, and she had a 3-year-long battle where she could not use her name. She could not, in public at all, she couldn't design wedding dresses for 5 years, and she couldn't even work in the industry. So she had to legally change her name. She was sued, and she had to create a different business, and like she started creating shoes. And that, her case really taught me a lot. The case literally just ended, but she's actually she was my wedding dress designer. And she actually is the one that taught me about this. So I was so glad that she really emphasized and taught me about non-compete clauses, because it can seriously ruin your life. And if you don't believe me, go look up the case. It's very interesting. I hope this video was really informative for you. I just want to reiterate kind of my timeline of things. So I graduated in December of 2021, December like 17th, 18th. I got my okay to test from AACN, I want to say at least within the month, because I took my test February 15th. I heard about this job opportunity in January of 2022 because I remember asking my boss at my nursing job if I can go part-time because I was hoping to still do both. Once I got my license in February, I interviewed in March of 2022. I didn't hear back that I officially got the job. I want to say even until the end of April, so 4 months. And then I started the whole privileging process and background checks and all that stuff. And I actually did not start my job until August 16th of 2022. And that is 8 months into the year after I graduated. So not every facility is going to take that long. Some take 2 to 3 months, but remember, this is a very long process. Give yourself some grace. Search high and low for jobs that you actually love and are interested in, and make sure you do whatever makes you happy and will sleep at night. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you on the next one. Bye.